Share Aviation, a network for pilots by pilots.
Welcome to episode 3 following my training for a restricted instrument rating. Just going to give you an idea of what we did today and then tell you how I found it. So today we did first of all a recap on some of the stuff that we've done before. So that was mainly limited panel and full panel flying, just kind of taking heading information and holding altitude, holding the right heading, and doing time turns onto a heading and things like that. And also there was kind of an emphasis on doing checklists today, and so kind of the difference between just doing a normal checklist and how you might do it while flying under IFR is that after every single little check you need to go back to your instruments. So let's say you're doing a bump pitch check, you go brakes, pressure, check that parking brake isn't on, then you go back to flying, make sure that you're still straight and level, make sure you're still at the right speed, make sure that you're still at the right altitude. Then you go undercarriage, well, fixed undercarriage, then you go back, and then mixture full, then you go back. So it's a bit slower, but it's so easy while you're kind of running through checks, and your attention is kind of divided elsewhere, to not notice that maybe you've been tipped to the right 5 degrees, and then you end up turning a little bit, and then let's say that you're on like a vectored approach, and that could mean that you're like 10 degrees off, and then you're completely off the heading that they've given you, which obviously isn't good. So that was kind of a big thing that we didn't just introduce it today, but there was more kind of emphasis on getting that right today. The second thing that we did was some more unusual attitude stuff. So last lesson we did some of that, some unusual attitude, but today we did it with limited panel rather than full panel, which is what we did last time. So whereas with full panel you've got the attitude indicator, which is obviously a really good kind of indication of which way you're pointing, and it's easy enough to work out what corrective action you need to take. With limited panel you've only got the indications from things like the turn coordinator and what your airspeed is doing. Like a good giveaway is, if your airspeed is much higher than you expect, you're probably going to be nose down, and if it's much lower, then you'll be nose up, and then you can take the appropriate corrective action. And what I found quite interesting was that it tends to be, so let's say you're nose down, when you pull back, because you don't have the attitude indicator for you to be able to split the dot and the attitude indicator so you know your level, the way you kind of gauge it is you say, well, when my airspeed actually starts coming down, so when it stops being, say, it'll be increasing when you're looking at it, when you open your eyes, when your instructor's doing it, obviously, and then it will stop increasing, and then it'll be stable, and then it'll start decreasing. And you can say that when it becomes stable, just before it starts decreasing, that's when your wings level. So that's the attitude that you hold when your speed is airspeed is stable, and then it starts decreasing, so you hold that attitude, which is quite interesting. And then the last thing that we did today was to do a surveillance radar approach, obviously simulated. So my instructor was kind of the what would be the tower. So he was giving me heading instructions and telling me what altitude I should expect myself to be at, and then I was responding to him, as if I were the pilot in command and he were the controller in the tower. So at the end of the last lesson, he demonstrated that to me, and obviously there was some slightly more complex stuff in there than just normal straight and level, but I kind of understood the concept of it from the last lesson and kind of got how it works, so I thought it would be fine today. But actually what I found was that so when you're in straight and level or kind of normal flight, full panel, because we did the SRA full panel, the workload is actually relatively simple to deal with. You do get used to dealing with that kind of workload, and so I figured that, well, actually seeing is that it's more or less that, except all your heading information is given to you. So all that's happening is the controller will say, turn onto this heading, and then you're 5 miles away from the field. You should expect to be at like 1,500 feet. Then I expected it to be more or less like that. But actually, something that surprised me was that I was just completely blown away by the workflow. I just about kept up, but only just. It was kind of, I wasn't expecting there to be that much work, that much going on all at once. So definitely some practice needed there. But I mean, it is kind of, I feel like I can see that there is kind of light at the end of the tunnel. I do know that I'll be able to get it under control, and actually it gave me the same kind of feeling when I started learning to fly. Those first few lessons where you get into the aircraft and you look at all the different instruments and you think, how on earth am I going to be able to get to grips with all these? How on earth am I going to keep track of what's going on? But actually, after a while, you do get a hang of it, and obviously by the time you get your license, you've completely got a hang of it, and it kind of becomes second nature. So that was the kind of feeling that I got today, just of being completely overwhelmed with information, with things to keep track of, with being able to hold a heading precisely. Just all those things that it kind of overtook me a little bit at stages. Not all the way in, but at some points it did. So yeah, I guess kind of that was my experience today, was that it was alright, like it was good and it was really interesting, but I really need to brush up, not only on my radio skills, but also on my ability just to kind of keep ahead of the aircraft and to monitor what's going on. So today what we did was we flew the approach all the way down to our minima. So at Barton we actually, the runway that's normally in use is runway 27, but we fly the kind of simulated SRAs on 20. So what we did was we said, well, we'll fly down to minima, which is 600 feet, and then we'll execute a low altitude visual circuit. So we stayed at 600 feet and timed based on our ground speed, which is kind of airspeed minus the headwind component for the runway that we're on, and then we timed it for how long it should take us to reach the runway threshold, and then said, okay, well, we're ahead the runway threshold, we'll look out, see if we can see the runway, and we did, which was quite comforting actually, because I think it's quite an odd sensation to be flying on what you know is a course that's headed for the right runway, and you know that it is meant to be taking you in, and you should be heading towards the runway, but I think because you can't see outside, and this is something that's kind of, it's something that you need to grasp as a VFR pilot. I need to be able to grasp is that actually it's not just, you're not just looking at instruments, you're not just flying the instruments, you're actually flying in real space. The instruments are there for your information, but you're still moving around in real space, and so to be able to kind of fly this approach and then look outside and say, well, actually the runway is right there. I did fly that approach, and there it is, was quite I guess a good thing to help cement in my mind. So that was today. Definitely need to keep on working on it. I think we're going to fly a couple of SRAs next time. You can't actually get your restricted IR off the back of a SRA, so a surveillance radar approach, but my instructor, and I completely trust him in this, and I agree, thinks that it's a really handy thing, a really good thing to know, and also it will help you with the radar vector approaches with the VOR and all that kind of stuff later on. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode.